Okay, well, I'm super excited to speak with Dawn Gabriel today, and just really dive into this topic about creating team culture that has clinicians begging to work with you. And I know that that's something we haven't really spoken too much about on the podcast. So super excited for what you bring to the audience here, Dawn. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, before we get into our topic, let's hear a little bit more about you and what you do to help therapists. For those who don't know about you.
Sure. So I am in Castle Rock, Colorado, and about 8 years ago, I started my group practice. I kind of just fell into it with wanting to go on maternity leave for a second time. And I was like, how can I get paid to stay home for 3 months and still make money and pay the rent on my office space? And then I thought, you know what? No, I feel like I need to start a group practice now. And so I started group practice, didn't really know much about business, and then grew over the next 8 years. And so 2 years ago, I also launched Soul Care for Therapists, which focused specifically on therapists and group practice owners, helping them build sustainable practices and lifestyles. Because I think sometimes we focus so much on business. So I have 10 therapists. One of them is an intern, 3 to 4 admin staff. And we are private pay practice, say that
Mhm.
5 times fast, in Colorado. And our team is a Christian therapist. However, we don't advertise as overtly Christian. We can integrate that at the client's request, but it
Mhm.
is not something that is advertised. But that's how I
Right.
market when I'm recruiting team members. So
Okay, cool. Well, let's wow, that's amazing. Ten therapists and office staff. And so I'd love to just hear a little bit more about the story of, building that staff and maybe take us back to kind of the beginning when you were just starting to build this group practice. When did you kind of realize that team culture was maybe even a thing?
yeah, it's true. Like I said, I didn't know much about business. So when I first started, and I think this goes for a lot of group practice owners, I was really scared to
Mm,
make the rent, and am I going to fill these clinicians? And
yeah.
so when I first started, I had worked in a group practice kind of. It was more like a cohort or a collaborative where we
Yeah.
just rented space together. And one of them came with me, and then I had 2 friends who were therapists that I actually went to grad school with, and they said, "Hey, can we join your practice?" And I was like, "What?" I was,
Wow.
insecure, didn't really know much. I was like, "Sure." So we started with 4 of us right away, and they were amazing. But then I was like, "Okay, I have to grow. I have to build." And so I didn't know how to interview. I just anyone who came along, I said yes to, and found out quickly that is not okay. Um, I was just like, "Oh, you wanna work with me? Yes, I will let
Right.
you." And I just went to coffee with them, and that was the interview. So,
Yeah.
I think it was probably 3 years in, honestly. I remember specifically sitting in my, waiting room with another therapist who was one of the first ones who was really good friends with me, and I was crying because one of the therapists
Mm,
had come. A therapist had just told me she was leaving and taking 100% of the clients with her.
wow.
And she hadn't even been there a year. So she left a community mental health practice, joined mine, got full, and then left and took everyone. And I was like, what's happening? So I was crying and just so upset. And that's when I realized I have to start interviewing differently, and I have
Yeah.
to start a team culture that
Yeah.
keeps people on my team. I really started questioning like what's happening here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so what was the starting point of like, okay, how do I interview better? Did you find resources? Did you just get some coaching on that? Where did you start?
Yeah, actually I honestly, it started with that therapist and I talking, and she said, "Dawn, you have such a heart for therapists and for ministry, actually, that you have something good here that you don't realize, and you need to hire for your values." Like, and she's
Mm,
not a coach at all. She was just a really good
yeah.
friend.
Wow.
And that's when I realized I wasn't really being value centered. I was just
Yeah.
being more fear based. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's when I started getting coaching and consulting around year 2 and 3, and I realized, "Oh, there's actually a business structure here, and I can build this business, and really there's people out there who can help." And that's when I started, um, honing in on the business aspect and also my values that were really important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so did you kind of create a like mission statement and get your
Yeah.
values and all that stuff in place?
Yes, I really started honing in on, um, more the deeper work and not
Yeah.
just filling the practice, because it kind of like Start With Why, the Simon Sinek
Yeah.
series where he's like, start with why, find your why. And just really building on that, because when people know you're passionate, they want to work with you and they buy
Yeah.
into you and your
Yeah.
vision. And then it started to switch, which is a really important thing, to not just Dawn's practice, but the counseling center,
Yeah.
because it became people were buying into the vision, not just I need a job, I want to see clients, I'm a therapist, pay me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you mind sharing what your vision is and maybe some of your values for the practice? So for
Sure.
people who maybe need an example or they haven't ever created a vision statement or mission
Yeah.
statement and all that stuff.
Yeah, and so actually I do wanna say I at first didn't come up with this perfect 5-line mission statement with 5 objectives and
Right.
like all the strategic plan. I really didn't. I
Yeah.
just really spoke from the heart, and I knew
Yeah.
my passion was creating therapists who wanted to be on a team, who wanted
Yeah.
to work together. So the team was
Yeah.
really important, and they wanted to collaborate, not just show up, see clients, and leave. They wanted a
Yeah.
team atmosphere for peer consultation.
Yeah.
That was really important. The second one was obviously more client focused, that they were really good at sitting with clients and that the clients really liked them. And I know that sounds obvious, but I think sometimes you can see some therapists who come in who are more clinical and
Mhm.
more
Less
I don't know.
relational.
Yeah, less relational.
Yeah.
And the name of my center is Authentic Connections Counseling Center. And I
Mhm.
really wanted clients to feel like they had a lifetime therapist, not insurance, where sometimes insurance only gives you 12 sessions and they get their problem fixed and they leave.
Right.
This was more, our therapists are household names. Like the whole family knows the therapist's name and it's a
Mhm.
relationship. And so that was the second one, is client relation centered.
Yeah.
And then the third that I think is really special to our center is I'm really involved in the community, and the community knows our center well.
Yeah.
So and that was really important. So we do a lot of events with the community. I'm involved in the chamber. Um, but yeah, we just do a lot. So if
Yeah.
there's like, unfortunately, if there's a hard situation like a suicide in the community or the teens in high school, like we go in, we help debrief, we offer our services. So there's a lot of that too. So
Yeah.
those are the three main ones, like team culture, they want to work on a team, client, more relationship based, and then community
That's great.
were the three big ones for me.
Yeah, and I bet that kind of, and I know for myself, and that's something I've worked on for my own business, is like what are our values? And as I started building a team, and it became so important because actually call it like our North Star. Like this is what's in front of us. And so my conversations with someone who I'm hiring always start with them reviewing, our values and kind of talking through like which value really stands out to you, which is the most important. And it helps me so much to start there, because I know that if someone doesn't really fit these values, then they're just not going to be a good fit for the team. There's going to be issues,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's not worth it. I don't have time to have those issues. So I'm sure that became helpful for you to kind of have that in front of you, to always like, we start with this conversation and this is what I'm trying to build.
Yes. Another thing that helped me do that, Daniel, and I think it was huge, is because I love people, I love connecting. I tended to make decisions when I was hiring based on, I really like this person, I want to be friends with them. They're going to be great on my team,
Yeah.
meaning because we're all going to be friends. And that kicked me in the butt.
Mhm.
And I realized I had to invite some other people into the interview process with me who could kind of balance out my style, my emotional pull,
Yeah.
and they were a little more maybe administrative or more discerning on some things, and that
Yeah.
helped me. They also I knew to never just offer it during the interview, to sleep on it, wait a couple days,
Yeah.
um, definitely do your calls and dig into, like, your, what's it called? Why am I blanking on what it's called? Reference checks, yeah.
Yeah.
And so once I had other people involved in that and the discernment process, that really helped hone in, and then
Hmm.
my leadership team also bought into, they were able to interview the person and the person got to feel what the team felt like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was another big, huge shift for me.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about like team culture in and of
Mhm.
itself, and
Yeah.
this kind of the when we're talking about which topics we want to talk about today, really I found it intriguing, creating a team culture that has clients begging to work with you. So, what are some of the things that you do as far as team culture to put before these people that you're going to be hiring that really helps them to feel like, oh yeah, this would be a great fit, and this is also just a benefit to join Dawn's team.
Yeah. So I have some small things and some big things. And I would say one of the funniest and smallest things is I provide snacks and drinks for my therapist.
Okay.
And I had to put a note on there saying this is just for therapists, because all of our teen and kid clients would like wipe me out of
Mm,
like
yeah.
daily. I'd be like, I cannot refill and feed the whole counseling center. But
Yeah.
anyway, and I had someone, and I put that on our job posting, and someone called and said, I figured if you are providing snacks, you really care about your team.
Yeah.
And it was a little show, just a little detail. I also have
Yeah.
chocolates in the waiting room. It's just the little things. So that's one part. The
Yeah.
bigger part is I'm really big on soul care and taking care of the therapist, so that number one, so that they can take care of clients, they can take care of themselves. I want them to
Yeah.
enjoy their job. I want them to stay. So I spend a lot of time doing soul care. I take them on one soul care retreat a year. We do soul care day retreats, and we talk about it during our team meetings. And so I'm constantly looking at them as like therapist as person, as self,
Yeah.
so that they can take care of themselves, because you just cannot do this job without doing that. And a lot of people forget that and want their therapist to see 40 clients in a week. And my full time
Right.
is 25.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's just a few of where I start.
Yeah. And when you're going through that hiring process, is that part of the job post that you put out there, or is that something on your website? Like I assume that you're putting that front
Mhm.
and center, because that even just hearing you describe it, I'm like, wow, yeah, that would make you stand out in the
Yeah.
sea of, hey, we're just hiring a therapist. Like, oh wow, this place really cares about their therapists.
Yeah, I word it in a way where it's saying, I also put spiritually minded, because I want to attract people who are open to faith and open to spirituality.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't put Christian, because I don't want to, I know this is funny. I don't want to attract the really conservative Christian therapist. I like
Mm,
more of the open. Colorado's definitely more open minded. I came from the Bible Belt, so I just needed to
hmm.
make sure that I have that conversation up front too in the first phone
Yeah.
conversation, like, tell me about your spirituality. Are you okay that we implement this into our team culture? So on the job post, it says spiritually minded team, fun team, peer consultation is a regular practice, team snacks, soul care retreats. That's all on the job description before
Yeah.
they even apply.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, that would really make you completely stand out. And
Yeah.
my mind's spinning a little bit, because I'm always, people know my story. My wife is a therapist, so like we are a team and we're not a team, because like she's building her private practice and she's in the process of building her team, and so I see the struggles and the things, and we are always like having these sorts of conversations, like what can we do attract good people? How do we build a team? And she's kind of at the starting stages of that. And so it's fun to watch, but it's also challenging to watch. But I am so thankful I get to talk to people like you that I can kind of take these little nuggets of wisdom and go back and say, hey, I was talking to Dawn about culture. Have you thought about this? So it's
Yeah.
fun. So thank you for that. I get like free
Yeah.
consultation for her.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing that I add into that is I do a 15-minute phone call before I move into the interview process. So if I like their
Yeah.
resume and their application, I just do a quick phone call to look at a few things and I get a feel on the phone. Then I invite them in to start the process and I let them
Yeah.
know up front. I think the more clear you can be in the job posting and right up front, say, here's the process. You'll do a phone call, you'll do a group interview, then you'll have a follow-up with me, then I'll make an offer. Like I let them know, this is a process. Are you
Yeah.
in for it?
Yeah, that's really good. That's something that I've done in my own business, like starting with I call it a screening call, where
Oh,
you just
yeah.
want to sit with them. Like, do you get a good vibe from them? Is their personality a good fit with your personality? Because sometimes on that phone call, it's where you realize, oh, like this conversation is not really flowing. I cannot imagine like working with you, unfortunately. So it lets you save a lot of time. So I love that. I love that process. Just kind of going through the steps and for me, one thing I've learned too is to focus those multiple interviews on different things. So one of them for me, I'm just talking about my process. I focus on culture itself. So like, what are some of the things that you're passionate about outside of what you do? Where do you want to be in like 5 to 10 years? And kind of like not even talking so much about their role and what they're going to be doing, but more about them as a person. And then there's an interview that we do a little later on when I feel like they're a good fit. Like, okay, let's talk about your skills. Let's talk about you know,
Yes.
your how you would perform in this job, and what do you want to do in this role, that sort of thing. So I'm all about the process and kind of like having people take these steps and show their commitment, and also like really like digging in along the way.
No, and you can tell the difference, Daniel. I mean, you and I just went through that process and I just hired your team and because it was leaps and bounds above any other website design I've done. So it's
No,
huge.
thank you.
I could feel your culture, I could feel your process. It was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
I know. I felt like I'm like, "Ooh, we have similar like mindsets and how this works." It is, it's relational. And
Yeah,
your job is to get the client's voice out there and you have to know them and you have to
yeah.
enjoy working with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're pretty much like a group practice owner.
Okay. All right. I need to
Very
own
s
that. And yeah, that's great. Well, tell me a little bit more about you've got this team of 10, and you've I love your interview process and kind of like how you kind of integrated culture into those interviews. Are there things that you're looking to do as far as culture, like for the future, new things that you want to implement? Like kind of talk through like what you're learning as you are leading your team and your culture.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always learning. I think if you're really into team culture, you're constantly learning from your team and that could look different based on on your team. And so I'm really into the Enneagram. I don't know if
Yeah.
you are familiar with that, but it's
Oh yeah.
it's a personality test for your listeners who might not know that it kind of looks at 9 different types of personality and it's deeper than your basic test and in fact it's more of a journey. And so
Yeah.
we've been going through that as a team and it has helped so much um, me understand my team members individually, and then we talk about it as a team so we can really
Yeah.
get along better. It's huge. Like I'm an Enneagram 3, which is a high achieving performer. And then I have my leadership team. I have 2 8s, which are really strong personalities.
Hmm.
Um, kind of think attorney, maybe bulldogish, but
Yeah.
when they're healthy, they're great and balance me out. And then I have a bunch of 9s on my team. Um,
That's me.
yeah. Okay. You okay.
I'm a
Yeah.
textbook nine.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Which
love
is
it. I
the
love
for
my
people who don't
9s.
know, the nines are the peacemakers. It fits like I'm also an introvert too, so it totally fits with my personality. I'm like, oh yeah, that's me exactly.
Yeah. And even diving in for for my personality as a 3, where I go in stress and health, I actually go
Yeah.
towards a 9. And
Mm.
so we've been able to talk about that personally with some of my team members of how I can help them when they're stressed.
Yeah.
How will I know when they're stressed? So I feel like even team culture, it goes into different layers once they're on your team of
Yeah.
really caring for them as a person. And yeah, so I would definitely go more in that direction, just getting really personal with them. Um, one thing I've been considering, I don't know if you know Valerie Summers, she's been talking about attachment theory with her team,
Okay.
like more of looking at attachment theory and like a team works like that, like a family, and just kind of addressing like here's some of our attachment wounds, not to do group therapy, but just
Yeah.
more on a deep level. And that sounds more like a retreat for me. Like we would talk about that in a safe container
Yeah.
retreat style where we could
Yeah.
really hear one another's stories.
Yeah, I love that
Mm,
because yeah, we're
yeah.
like you've got sort of the big picture stuff for the practice that's just like you need to know this when you come in. You need to know these are the important things for us and the values of our practice. But now you're kind of moving into the ongoing deeper work of connecting with somebody. And I just kind of hear that that heart for that long-term relationship. Like you said, you're very relational and like that totally comes out in that work that you're doing. So I love that. I love that you're using the Enneagram. That's got me kind of thinking I need to return to the Enneagram. It's been a while since I've dived into that. But I don't even remember what the where I go during stress. I'm like blanking. Where does the 9 usually go? Is it a 6?
I think, yeah, you go between a 3 and a 6, and then I go between a 6 and a 9 as well. Like we're like the middle of
Yeah.
anyway, it's I could
Yeah.
go on about it forever, but yeah.
Yeah, we gotta do an episode on Enneagram. I know
Yeah.
Whitney Owens is huge on the
Yes.
Enneagram too. Yeah.
Yes. She'd be great on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that's one great thing about the Enneagram is it does help you kind of understand those how your personality kind of shifts when you're stressed and when you're healthy and kind of where you go and you're like oh I've been operating out of my sort of stress personality here for sure. And I love that you're
Yeah.
using that for people on your team understand that about you and about each other, and so that kind of really can help your team just flow better. Be like, oh, I think you're under stress. Like, let's talk about what's going on and let's get to the root and move on so that we can all be working together and helping each other grow. I love that.
Yeah, thanks. My leadership team is really big on it too because we kind of talk about, okay, what's going on? What are some issues we see? And then one of us will bring up, okay, this person is stressed. We need to look at that and
Yeah.
not take it as more annoyance, but more
Yeah.
understanding. So
Yeah.
Um, another thing I want to say real quick is one thing we're looking at with the team culture is as we have some newer therapists and some seasoned therapists, and those are
Yeah.
very different on looking at where they are in their stages of development as a therapist
Right.
and knowing there's some more hands-on needing, but how can we encourage them to grow instead of just giving them answers, but just really encouraging them to think through and not lean so hard on supervision, but to definitely step into their own and make their own decisions. So we've started how can we hand back questions? How can we foster encouragement rather than just supervision? This is what you're supposed to do. We've been diving into that a lot
Yeah.
lately too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Again, that sort of long-term development, like just kind of
yeah.
trusting you're going to be with us for a while. And so like, let's grow. Let's all grow together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear just a little bit more about you mentioned your leadership team a couple times. So what did it look like for you to build a leadership team? What are some of their responsibilities and how they how you all operate together in the group?
Yeah, I would say it first came out of my own frustration of feeling like I was doing everything and working all the time and my
Mm,
own burnout. So
yeah.
it started more negatively, at least on my own personal story,
Yeah.
but then I realized I can't do it all. And I really do want to invite people into this team. And so I started with a clinical director and a practice manager. And so part of that was looking at what do I hate about running a group practice and what are my strengths? That's
Yeah.
probably too strong of a word, hate, but what are my strengths and what am I not so good at? And so I
Yeah.
looked at I feel like I actually am really good clinically, but it did not bring me life anymore and I needed a clinical director.
Mm,
And so that was someone who was more in charge of helping with client facing questions, so supervision and when there's a crisis, and just helping like client standard protocols, like standards of care. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that person was in charge of that. And
Hmm.
then my practice manager actually is like, I couldn't survive without her. So so she does everything more tech face, like our EHR, our practice management system. She helps
Yeah.
run the scheduling, the phone system. Like she knows how to run the practice. Like think office manager, but like bigger than that because
Yeah.
she does all my KPI tracking, retention numbers. But I had someone in there who was just an office manager and who had no clinical skills, and it just didn't work. So I needed a therapist in there to help me run it because the way she would communicate, "Hey, here are your numbers, your retention numbers, what's going on," was different than a
Yeah.
non-clinical person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the 2 I started with. And I just recently, like in the last 3 months, added team leads. And so because our team's getting bigger, I feel like once you hit around 6 or 7, the growing pains hit a little different.
Yeah.
And from 7 to 10, then you need to kind of break it up so that not one person is getting everyone
Right.
clinically, that they have team leads. So my team leads have like 3 or 4 under them.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, kudos to you for sounds like you're doing great work. And I just love hearing people's stories of how they've built their business and love the heart that's kind of flowing down into your team that I'm just hearing from you. And so, yeah, really appreciate it. Is
Thank
is
you.
there anything else that you want to leave people with about growing their group practice and creating culture, maybe for folks who are kind of still in that place of this is hard.
Yeah.
How do I do this? How do I do this
Yeah.
cohesively? And I guess my reason for asking that is kind of coming from a place of just watching my wife. Like we're in this stage of just she's doing an amazing job but it's all so new, it's also like
Yes.
brand new for her. And so she just hired an intern. So I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to get this person clients, but I feel like I'm supposed to bring them on. And so, yeah. So what do you say to people like that who are just like, okay, I want to build this team, but I'm just basically kind of putting out fires and just kind of getting things going right now?
Yeah, I love that question because your listeners are hearing me like 8 years in. It was not this polished and it did not look like that. It was a lot of
Yeah.
failures and hurt and
Mm,
stress until
yeah.
this point. And so I would say just encouragement that you don't have to have it all figured out right now. Like, but go back to your values and go back to what you need, and just be very aware of your own needs and your own
Mm,
strengths as
yeah.
a group practice owner, and be kind to yourself. Don't do the comparison game. Like,
Right.
yeah, and hire a consultant that, or get in a community with a few other group practice owners where you can talk this out. You have to have a community, whether
Mm,
you get a consultant or you have a few others that you just meet with regularly. That changed my life as a business owner,
wow.
personally as a business owner.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dylan. This has been a great conversation. I know it's going to help a
Yeah.
lot of people. Tell us where people can find you.
Yeah. So actually, right now I'm in the process of changing my website. So right now they can find me at faithfringes.com. That's where I do a lot of consulting and soul care for therapists. Soon it will be soulcarefortherapists.com. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, or they can email me Dawn at faithfringes.com.
Awesome. And we'll put all that good stuff in the show notes so people can find you. Thanks
Yeah.
so much, Dylan. It's been great chatting with you.
You too. Thanks, Daniel.